It is still technically winter, but I have been busy with spring prep around the house, or what I like to call my suburban homestead-ish house. I would never venture to claim that I live on a homestead, and I would never claim that I'm cut out for a true homestead lifestyle because I don't know if I am. But I do like to incorporate some of the pillars of homesteading into my very suburban lifestyle. As I've been getting this suburban homestead ready for spring, I have been working on some healthy freeze-dried snacks, some garden prep, and a couple of scratch-made recipes that I'm sharing with you today. Many people who own freeze dryers use them for prepping. I am not a prepper. Most of my food preservation is for short-term use, and there's a few reasons for that. One, prepping just isn't like really my thing or my vibe, but also because I live in the suburbs, I don't really have like a homestead pantry or a cellar to store a ton of food. So I like to be really selective in what I preserve and make sure I'm preserving things that I'm actually going to use. And ideally, these would be the best quality ingredients that I can find, whether it's something that I grew in my garden, found from a local farm or farmer's market, or if I just find, say, organic produce on a good deal at the grocery store, I can freeze dry or preserve that food too. So I know on the front end, freeze drying seems like a lot of extra work because you have to chop all this stuff and process it and put it in the freeze dryer, but it actually saves me a lot of time in the long run because then I have healthy preserved food on hand, even in my small suburban pantry whenever I want it. A few weeks ago, I published a video about freeze drying eggs. I was able to fit 96 eggs in 3 jars and then store them in my small pantry. So that works out really great for my suburban homestead-ish lifestyle. Now, in terms of spring prep, this isn't necessarily spring food, bananas and apples. However, I do find that this time of year, I really want to lighten up what I'm eating. It's still a little cold outside, but the sun's out a little bit longer. It is getting warmer, at least it is here in southeastern North Carolina. And I do feel around February, March, I'm ready for some lighter, healthier foods. So I just sliced up the apples and bananas, put them right into my Harvest Right freeze dryer trays. You can find out more about the Harvest Right in the link below in the description box. And I simply hit go, and that is it. So it does take a couple days for them to freeze dry, but while they're in there, I am living the rest of my life. So we'll get back to the freeze dried snacks in a few minutes, but let's talk about the spring garden prep around my house. For spring prep, we are also expanding our garden, and gardening and growing my own food is probably the main pillar of homesteading that I incorporate into my suburban lifestyle. Last year we had 4 small, I think like 4x4 garden squares, and we are more than doubling that. Now this has gone through a number of iterations. What you just saw there actually is not what our garden's going to look like at all. We totally changed our mind. At the time of recording this, we have about 5 weeks until the last frost date, so we still have some time to finish this up and figure out our final plans. But this is really exciting because I'm going to grow as much food as I can and preserve as much food as I can from my own garden so we can enjoy it all year long. But even though it's winter, I have like serious spring fever. I cannot wait to get outside and get my hands in the dirt. So just to kick things off, maybe even a little preemptively, I did make a rosemary vanilla latte with rosemary from my garden. Now, in full disclosure, I did not create the rosemary vanilla latte. There is a coffee shop that I go to every week or so to work that has the best rosemary vanilla latte. So this is sort of my hat tip to them, and also hopefully my way of being able to recreate that at home. This latte starts with a simple syrup that's a combination of sugar, fresh rosemary, a whole vanilla bean. I scooped out the seeds just to make sure that flavor really got in there, about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and water. So you just bring these to a simmer on the stove and let it cook for about 15 minutes like you would any other simple syrup. Now, if you don't like herby sort of flavors or even floral kind of flavors, this might not be a good recipe for you. However, I really like this one because it's a light flavor. It doesn't have an overwhelming rosemary flavor to me, and it just adds this little touch of spring essence to my coffee in the morning as I'm sitting here waiting desperately for garden season to begin. If you want to reduce the rosemary flavor, you could use less rosemary and that would work just fine. I really like these floral flavors in coffee especially. I feel like floral flavors actually make coffee taste more like coffee, if that makes any sense. But if that's not your thing, just reduce the amount of rosemary and that's a great option. Make sure you're also stirring this just so that sugar doesn't burn. And then once it has simmered for about 15 minutes, just take any jar that you have that can hold hot liquid and then run this through a fine mesh strainer just to make sure you don't get any of the rosemary pieces and the big chunks of vanilla don't go in with it. And then you can simply just add this to your latte when you make it for a really nice springtime coffee. added aesthetic touch, I am using a coffee art stencil. I actually make, design, and sell these through my website, moonandmagnolia.com. You can check that out in the description box below, but this is just a classic latte look that's really lovely for the start of spring, even though it's still technically winter. Now, another pillar of homesteading that I like to incorporate into my very suburban lifestyle is scratch-made cooking. And now, of course, it's not just people who live on homesteads that make food from scratch, but I do think there is this sort of feeling that if you live in the suburbs that you can't make things like sourdough bread or scratch-made food because that's for somebody else. But I'm here to tell you it is for you if that's what you want to do. In my experience, cooking from scratch became easier and much more interesting when I started to garden and preserve my own food, because they really kind of layer, or they're kind of compounded with each other. When you grow your own food and you cook with it, or you grow it and preserve it and then cook with it later, the act of it and the reward of it becomes much more gratifying. But that does not mean you have to have a garden or you have to preserve food to make scratch-made food in your homes. Truly, you can make scratch-made food with plenty of great store-bought ingredients. So I really want to encourage you, if this idea of suburban homesteading and making scratch-made food is appealing to you, you can start right here by just making some homemade meals with store-bought food. And then once you feel like you get the hang of that or you're ready to move on, then maybe add in a little bit of gardening. Start with some herbs and put your own herbs in your food, or maybe do a little bit of food preservation and then in the winter cook with that. And I do feel that in time it becomes a lot easier, and the very act of it is just so rewarding that you'll want to keep doing it. In the spirit of that, I am actually making sweet potato fritters with sweet potatoes that I grew on my patio in a fabric grow bag last year. So I harvested them last year at the end of summer, and they've been wrapped up and in my pantry. Now, I will say some of these sweet potatoes look a little small. We had a critter problem, and I just went ahead and pulled them before all the bunnies and the bugs ate them for me. So they are a little bit small, but they are perfectly edible and they are so good. So all I did is I shredded up some sweet potatoes, and then I also sauteed some onions just to sweeten them up a little bit and get that extra flavor. I'm combining them with 2 eggs. I'm actually using freeze-dried eggs here, but for you, if you don't have freeze-dried eggs, just use 2 eggs. If you are using freeze-dried eggs, it would be 4 tablespoons of eggs and 4 tablespoons of water. Then I'm just adding in about 3 tablespoons of flour and salt and pepper. Then to do this, just mix it up, and you'll notice that the texture begins to change. It almost becomes more like a paste. You'll know that you've added enough flour when it kind of sticks to the spoon or falls off the spoon in a clump. If it doesn't do that, just add a little bit more flour until it does. And then I like to fry up sweet potato fritters in coconut oil because those two flavors go really nicely together, but you can use whatever oil you have on hand. And then just shape these into a patty like you would any other sort of patty or fritter. And when the oil is hot, when it sizzles, if you sprinkle a little bit of water on it, put your sweet potato fritters right in there. Making sure the oil is hot enough is key here, because if it's not hot enough, they'll soak up the oil, which can make them kind of nasty. But if the oil is hot enough, it will make them crispy and delicious. I also like to flatten them a little bit just to help them cook. The other thing I should note too is when you shred these, do it on a fine shredder so that way the sweet potatoes can cook through a little more easily. After like 3-4 minutes, turn them. I usually turn them once, maybe twice, depending on what's going on. And then you have these super delicious and simple sweet potato fritters. And this came from my garden from last year. So I think I harvested them in like September, October, I can't remember now. But at the time of recording this and filming, it's February. So that's pretty awesome that I'm still using food from last year's garden and we're enjoying it now. Also, for spring prep around the house, I am getting my seeds started for this year's garden. At the time of filming this, there was about 5 or 6 weeks left until the last frost date. So it is perfect timing to get my seeds going. And historically, I actually have not done great with starting seeds, but I got really serious about it in the fall. I got grow lights, I got the proper trays and proper soil, and I had about 100% success rate with my seeds. But my fall garden was a total bust because it never got cold enough for fall plants. It was about 80 80 degrees many days all the way through December. So it just didn't really get cold enough, so my plants didn't get to grow, but that is not going to be a problem in the summer here. So I am getting started with some flower seeds. I do have vegetable seeds on the way. They just have not arrived yet. So I'll start those as soon as they get here. But in the meantime, I am getting my cut flowers started. So last year I did my first cut flower garden and it was life-changing. I had fresh flowers in my house every single day all the way until frost, and it was so awesome. I used to always say that life is too busy for me to grow things that don't feed me, but I have completely changed my tune about that. Of course, I still grow food, but growing flowers was really one of the only things that I've done truly for myself in a long time, and it brought so much joy into my every single day that this year I am going to grow as many cut flowers as I can. I am now using these reusable trays. These are extra large cells, which I actually recommend. It was a total pain last year to have to repot my seedlings only to then transplant them outside. So I'm giving these a try this year, and so far so good. Our greenhouse is not ready yet to use, so I am starting these seeds in my kitchen. And I just saw someone post on Instagram the other day, and they were getting a ton of criticism for starting seeds in their kitchen. And I'm here to tell you, you should start seeds wherever you have the space to do it. Your counters can be clean, your floors can be clean. All of that dirt that might get in your kitchen, if that's where you're starting your seeds like I am, is really easy to clean up. And spoiler alert, your food grows in dirt, so there's always going to be a little dirt in your kitchen, even if you don't know it. But truly, if you live in the suburbs, sometimes it can be hard to find space to do things like growing seeds. So start them wherever you have the space to do it. And if you need grow lights, put them wherever you can. Right now, I have grow lights in my guest room closet. It looks a little crazy in there because there's like boxes of stuff and storage. And then behind that, there are shelves with grow lights and seeds, and it works. It worked great in the fall. It's working great right now. And I'm not going to let the fact that I don't live on a homestead and I don't have acres of land stop me from growing flowers and living the life that I want to live and love right here in my home. I always like to contain mess if possible, which is very hard with a toddler, by the way, but I did put a little brown paper down to catch some dirt, but most of the dirt my 3-year-old did smear all over the counter. So yes, I used a hand vacuum to clean the dirt right off my counter, and then I sanitized my counters and used a broom, and we got back to business as usual. Spring is the time for cleaning out, for starting new, for growth and renewal. And I hope that as you are prepping for spring, you are starting to create and cultivate the life that you want to live and the life that you love, no matter where you are. Now, just to come back to the freeze-dried snacks really quickly, it took about 2 days for these to dry because there were a lot in there, but my child loves these snacks, and now we have fresh, healthy, preserved snacks around the house to have whenever we want them. Thank you so much for tuning into Moon and Magnolia's YouTube channel, where we elevate the everyday from scratch and at home wherever we are. And I'll see you again next time.